So, Lexie, Evelina, do you want to introduce yourselves and begin?
We can totally take it from the top. So I'll be the only speaker today. Lexie is recovering from nature taking over her body, so she'll save her voice for any sidestepping that she needs to do. But the content was prepared by both of us because we deal with participant recruitment quite a lot and have some lessons learned that we wanted to share here. And of course, my doesn't work. So Evelina and Lexie, colleagues, friends, collaborators, and we have a document that presents a lot of the content here and some extra stuff that you can access online and peruse at your own leisure now or later, because we don't have enough time to go over everything that we wanted to. So you can track along on the document, and Lexie will post the link in the chat, and we'll repeat that link towards the end of the presentation in case you change your mind and you want to access the content later. So things that we'll talk about today are recruitment channels with their pros, cons, and considerations, how to screen participants and how to reduce scammer presence and poor data from the scammers, certain things that you should consider about scheduling and ensuring that your participants that you spend money to recruit actually show up and complete your study, what to do and how to issue incentives and some considerations around those, and a couple other points that kind of don't really fit into our short presentation, but some food for thought as you're preparing to recruit and do studies with human participants. So we will start with an assumption that you are a researcher who's well-trained and understands your methodologies, and that you have defined your research question, picked the method that's appropriate for that question, and defined the sample that you need to target to answer your research question. We'll assume that you have identified who you will recruit and that your criteria are appropriate for the types of questions that you're trying to answer. The things that we will talk about today are how to identify channels for recruitment, again, the considerations for each, how to set up your study and launch the recruit and begin recruiting and attracting folks for your study, how to schedule participants and how to make sure that they actually don't just sign up, but they also show up and do the work that you need them to do, as well as how do you make sure that payments to your participants or the incentives are issued successfully. So the first step in our journey is really identifying channels for recruitment. And there are quite a few of them, and some of them didn't make this table. I don't expect you to read this table. It's in the document. You can access it for comparison. So these are some of the key recruitment or common recruitment channels. We'll talk about only 4 of those today. And the rest, again, you can access in the document that we have provided a link to. I will start with a very common and low-cost entry channel, which is social media and snowball sampling. This is where you are recruiting participants on social platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, any publicly open discussion forums where participants of certain types exchange information and actively engage in. So effort to recruit and manage this channel tends to be medium to high because you have to do a lot of legwork yourself and you have to stay engaged in recruitment until you hit your participant quota. Participant quality through these channels tend to vary greatly from low quality participants to high quality participants. And because the quality is so varied, you will be spending more time recruiting and managing participants than through some other channels. The cost to recruit tends to be low because you're doing that work only yourself. You're not paying a third party to perform recruitment for you. And this channel is best for a general interest population. And by general interest, we mean, 18-year-olds and up who use a specific application, adults 30 and up who go to a gym once a week, etc. So fairly broad strokes, kind of minimal criteria for attracting folks into your study. Incentive handling, when you are recruiting through social media channels and you're doing snowball sampling, tends to be on you. And the time to recruit tends to be longer because, again, your participant quality is quite varied. So you may need to spend more time weeding through participants that are low quality to ensure that you have a high quality sample that meets your criteria. So some considerations when you are doing social media and snowball sampling. And snowball sampling means you are asking people to refer others who fit certain criteria to your study. So social media and snowball sampling typically means that you have to continue to engage on the social media channels and continue to post your messages that you're recruiting for a certain type of study, that your study requires certain type of criteria, that you're going to offer certain types of incentives. And ideally, you are creating fresh content to make sure that anybody in your network gets to see the same message repeated several different ways. And because you are repeating that message several different ways, they are more likely to engage with that content. So that takes time and effort, and therefore the effort for you to recruit and manage this channel tends to be medium to high. You might also want to consider incentivizing referrals. So if you're looking for a certain type of demographic or user group, offering somebody a referral incentive, that could be a $10 card, $15 gift card, is a lower cost way to recruit participants than paying a third party to find those folks for you. And it tends to be a good way to increase the chances that you find the people you're looking for, again, at a fairly low cost. This method is good. This method for recruiting is good for a lot of different types of user research methods. So it gives you a lot of diversity. And this is also a good way to begin building your own participant panel, where you're taking people's name, contact information, some characteristics, and begin to build your own database that you can reuse later for future studies if you need those types of participants again. So that's one of the low cost and easy channels to begin utilizing for your research recruitment. Another way to recruit participants, and especially for those of you that are in product companies, you may already be familiar with this approach, is running an in-house managed customer panel. So this is where you are recruiting your customers from an established mailing list or an established database, and you're asking your customers to participate in studies around your product or your services. The effort to recruit and manage a panel here tends to be low to medium because a lot of the participant screening and pre-recruitment has already been done, and you're just reaching out to folks to sign up for new sessions and new studies. Participant quality tends to be medium to high because I will assume that you already know certain things about your customers. How much are they spending? How long they have been a customer? How often they engage with your product or your service? What kind of challenges they have had? What channels they tend to use when they reach out to you? Where do they do their shopping, if it's shopping, etc. So you should have at least some of that kind of information about your customers in your organization databases. And therefore, you can then be more targeted when you begin recruiting participants for your specific studies. The cost to recruit tends to be low to medium because, again, a lot of the legwork to recruit and screen folks initially has already been done. This is best for recruiting your customers rather than somebody else. Incentive handling tends to fall on you, and the time to recruit can vary from short to longer, just depending on how specialized your customers are. So if you are a business-to-business type of an organization and you are recruiting chemical engineers that use your software as a service product, maybe those folks will be slower to respond to your invitations to a study as compared to a general population responding to a retailer's request to join their studies. So that time can vary. So as I said, you're here recruiting through a variety of mailing lists, and a benefit of using an established in-house panel is that you can reduce the screener time to find the right participants for your project. And you're reducing the time because you, again, assuming you already have some information about your customers, how long they've been with you, what are they buying, what are they using, what are their behaviors, in a way that allows you to select them or disqualify them for the study that you're trying to do. Having an established customer panel allows you to use or allows you to avoid using the same participants across multiple studies. In some cases, you want the same folks to come back and do a study, and in some cases, you want brand new voices and opinions. And so you can track that information with people who are your customers and are participating in a lot of your studies. This recruitment channel is good for a variety of methodologies as well. And another added benefit is that you can keep detailed notes about a variety of your customers as participants to make sure that you have a good picture of who they are, and then qualify them or disqualify them from studies in the future, which overall reduces your recruitment time. So you can take notes such as, this person is always late, this person talks a lot and I can never finish my study, this person has a lot of really great insights about our competitors, etc. And those kind of notes can additionally help you enhance the value of research insights that you bring to the table after doing your study. So another channel for recruitment of participants is an expert network. An expert network is typically established by a variety of vendors. So Gerson Lerman Group, Maven, GuidePoint, and a whole slew of other groups. So when you are engaging with an expert network, it's a vendor and they're providing a recruitment service to you. So the effort for you to recruit somebody is really low, and the time to recruit tends to be very short, because the main point of these vendors existing is that they give you access to experts on a very quick turnaround timeline. Participant quality on the expert networks tends to be very high because experts are invited and selected to be on these networks for the main reason of making money by being participants in study. And what qualifies them to be on these panels and these networks is the fact that they have expertise in specific areas. The cost to recruit here, including incentives, tends to be medium to high because we are now beginning to deal with experts. So experts tend to be a smaller group of the entire population. Because they are rarer, they ask for more money to provide a point of view and answer your questions. Expert networks are best channel for recruiting hard to reach audiences. So doctors, chemical engineers, astronauts, you name it. So folks that you don't run into at a regular interval, on the street. The incentive handling is done by the vendor company. So you will pay a flat fee for incentivizing and recruitment upfront, and then they take care of the rest. So a few things to keep in mind about expert networks is that some of them are very specialized to specific types of topics or industries. So you would want to make sure that you are working and engaging with an expert network that can provide access to experts that are relevant to your needs. Pricing models for the expert networks also vary. So with some expert networks, you have to pay an upfront retainer, and then all the costs for recruitment and incentivizing come out of that retainer until you run out of money, and then you have to pay more money into the retainer for them to continue to work with you. In some cases, you may have a pay-as-you-go kind of expense where you pay for each person that gets recruited and signed up for your study, and they complete the study. And in some of the expert networks, the pricing may also be set up as pay per minute or pay per session arrangement. In those cases, for instance, an expert was recruited for your study, you get on a call with them, you talk to them for 5 minutes, and you realize that they aren't really going to provide you any valuable insight, or they're not really the kind of expert that you needed to talk to. And you can terminate that interview and compensate the participant only for the 5 minutes that they spent on a call with you. So that could be a convenient way to manage your costs and still get a lot of insights. But in other cases, again, depending on the vendor, you may need to pay the expert for the entire time that they have committed to spend with you on a call. So things to definitely look into before you engage with a vendor. One recent expert network type vendor emerged and appeared on the market, and we just wanted to mention that to you for some research purposes. They're called Current, so it's on the top right. That's the company that's listed. It is a moderated online discussion where the current vendor serves as an intermediary between you as the researcher and a group of experts. So as a researcher, you get to pose questions that you want answered by experts, and then Current moderates expert discussions around a series of topics in an online forum. So the benefits are that you do get a lot of perspectives from a variety of experts that meet certain criteria that you specify up front, but it's also an asynchronous activity, which means that you can engage with a lot of different experts without a lot of stringent scheduling constraints. So this kind of outlet and platform is not appropriate for usability testing or one-on-one interviews or observations, clearly. But this approach can be still used for successful concept validation, market research, competitor research, and several other different areas where user researchers may engage with the business and market experts. And the final thing I'll say about expert networks is that you cannot use this channel to begin building your own panel. The sole purpose of the expert networks existing on their business model is that they're the middleman for connecting you and the participant, and they really do not want you taking your participants' contact information and communicating with them directly, because they lose out on the financial benefits of that. Alrighty, and I must have skipped one. Yes, I did. So I'll go back. And the last channel for participant recruitment that we'll talk about today is the online panel. So over the last 5 to 8 years, a variety of vendors have appeared on the market, user testing, user interviews, SurveyMonkey, etc. And these vendors allow, and again, they sell the service of recruiting participants for your study and for your research needs. So the level 2, the effort to recruit and manage recruitment through this channel is low to medium. Participant quality, unfortunately, in our experience, tends to be quite varied from low to high. The cost to recruit can also vary from low to high. So just to call out, some of these vendors require that you have an ongoing annual subscription for their services, in addition to the recruitment incentives that you may have to offer when you use their platforms. Some of the vendors allow you to pay as you go or pay per participant type of model. So depending on the volume of research and depending on the volume of recruiting that you do, different pricing models may work in your favor or may not work in your favor. These channels are best for recruiting general interest populations and some types of experts. But if you want to find an astronaut, you probably need to go through other channels, not an online panel. Incentive handling is typically done by the vendor, and the time to recruit is also short, like the expert network, because the purpose of the service is that you get access to participants very quickly, and there are participants that want to participate in paid research studies. So a few things to keep in mind when you are working with an online panel. Some of these support only certain types of research methods rather than a whole range of your researcher's methodology toolkit. So a great example is SurveyMonkey. SurveyMonkey will give you access to folks who can take your survey, but if you want to do an ethnographic study, you want to do in-home visits, SurveyMonkey will not be the right vendor to recruit participants for those kind of research activities. So you need to look into what methods the vendors support. What we have also learned in our experience working with a variety of vendors is that vetting and controlling the quality of participants that are selected and invited to participate in your study varies greatly. So in some cases, you can preview who wants to participate in your study, and you can decide whether you want to invite them into the study or not. In other cases, you don't have that option, and the option is very limited. In some cases, the vendors have built participant quality control mechanisms, such as you have to have your social media presence verified, et cetera, but we are learning that participants find a lot of different ways to work around the quality control measures, and they appear as legitimate participants, yet we'll talk in a little bit about scammers and how to identify them, and we find that those quality control mechanisms really fall short of human ingenuity. And like with expert panels, you cannot use online panel as a way to start building your own participant database. So these are 4 of, I believe, 7 or 8 channels that we talk about in our deck. Please take a look if you're interested in learning about some other ways to recruit folks and the pros and cons of those. So next step in our journey is setting up our study and launching the Recruit, where we are attracting and inviting folks to join our study. And if there's one thing you walk away with today, it's this. The most critical part in recruitment is not the channel or how much your incentive is, but it's really whether you found the right people for your study. If you're doing a study with the wrong people, then your research is really not worth much. So I'll spend a few minutes talking about how to verify that the right people were recruited for your study and that the right people are signing up to be in your study. So we assume that in this process, you have created a participant screener. It's a list of criteria and questions that you're asking participants to confirm that they do meet the characteristics of your defined study sample. And depending on what recruitment channel you use, you may be able to review screener results ahead of time before somebody signs up for your study or before somebody shows up for a scheduled session. And if you have that option, we highly encourage you to do that. Review the screener so that you know whether the right person is going to meet you. And if you're doing survey studies, make sure that you're starting them with a screener to qualify or disqualify people from completing the rest of the survey so that you don't waste their time and that you're not collecting a lot of garbage data. And then we highly encourage that whether you're doing a survey study or you have a screener, that you pilot them both. In every case that I've run a study, and Lexie will nod her head saying that she did the same, whenever we launch a recruit and we have a screener that's live, after 2, 3, 4 people sign up, we take a look at who signed up to participate in our study. We review their screener, and we always learn that, hey, maybe this question isn't really getting me the kind of information that I want. Maybe I'm attracting slightly the wrong kind of person that I need. I need to tweak my question. I need to ask something additional to feel more confident that who I have attracted to my study is who I want to talk to. So those are a couple things to do as part of your, recruitment has started and you are in the transition between recruiting and scheduling phase. We have a couple tips around writing screeners. So we highly recommend that you always start with the must-have and deal-breaker criteria. So if you're looking for folks that live in a specific city, state, geography, list that as the first thing. And if they say they don't live there, end the survey and the screener so that they don't have to spend time filling out 15, 20 other questions, which I hope you never do because that's an extensive number of questions. But you disqualify them as soon as you know that you don't want to talk to a person of that type of characteristic. We also recommend that you avoid being obvious. So if you're looking for somebody who lives in a certain state, don't just ask, do you live in New York State or not? That's being very obvious. But you provide a variety of similar options. And using survey logic, you qualify people into the study or disqualify them from the study without appearing obvious as to who you're looking for. We also recommend that you include bad answer options into your multiple choice questions. So if you're looking for a person who uses a certain type of product or application or is a customer of a certain company, make sure that you're including some answer options that would indicate that they're either not paying attention or they're just clicking through the answers. So for example, you could include a product name that doesn't exist. You can include a product brand that doesn't exist. And if they were to select that option, it's a red flag for you that they either were not paying attention or they're just, trying to get through the screener and sign up for your study. And then finally, if participants get through all of the answers, at the end of the survey, we tend to ask 2 to 3 questions that we internally call Prove You're Not a Robot test. And what that is a question that requires a 2 to 3 sentence answer that we get to read when we are reviewing the screener. And the question could be, what's the latest movie that you've seen? And convince me to watch it or not watch it. Give me reasons why. And we ask a couple of such questions to make sure that the person is able to communicate in English in a way that we can understand. The person can follow instructions that are given to them. The person understands what we have asked of them rather than just write a bunch of words that don't make sense, which has happened in quite a few cases in our recruitment experience. So this is the kind of last litmus test to make sure that we do want to continue to engage with this participant before we make a commitment to running a full study with them. So the previous slide covers the criteria for participants that really meets our sample characteristic requirements. But then there are other parts of what it means to be the right participant that have nothing to do with their demographics or their behaviors. So some other things that you need to consider, and again, include in your vetting criteria, are things like, can they actually physically complete your study and attend your study in a way that you need them to? So if you have to do a study in person, will they be able to travel and meet you at a specific location? Or perhaps they have some requirements and needs that prevent them from traveling away from where they reside. Are they going to have to share their screen? Do they have the technical know-how, and do they have the capabilities to share their screen if that's a requirement for the study? Can they do a video stream? Can they be on camera with you? And not just can they, but would they be willing to? Would they be willing to share sensitive information with you as part of the study? I have been invited to a variety of studies with regard to how I manage my money. And even though I qualify for those studies because I fit certain criteria, I am not comfortable sharing my bank account information and interacting with my various accounts and showing the researchers my statements, because that's personal financial information that I'm not willing to disclose. And so when I hear those kind of questions in screeners, I disqualify from studies because I am not willing to share that sensitive information with others. So things that you need to consider as well. Will you need to talk to somebody with or without a translator, especially if it's a foreign language speaker, and can they do that successfully? These are additional things that you need to consider before you sign somebody up for your study or before you commit to doing a session with them and paying them an incentive for showing up. So I'll spend a few minutes talking about scammers and how to identify potential scammers. I guess nobody is a scammer until they are officially proven to be a scammer, but we'll say alleged scammers. So this has come up more and more lately, especially in online panel scenarios where we are recruiting folks to be in our studies. And these don't necessarily qualify somebody as a scammer or not, but these are red flags to watch out for when you are evaluating somebody's screener and somebody's kind of sign-up profile before you, again, commit for them to come into your study. So a few things to look out for if they are available to you, whether the photo that a person has uploaded represents the kind of person that they reflect in all other ways. So for example, I was recruiting truck drivers, and the participant who signed up to be in my study had a very polished, very clean, overstock type image as their profile photo. So to me, that raises a flag. It doesn't mean that they're not that person, but it's just something that kind of stands out as a little bit odd. Look at job titles. I had a doctor in New York City sign up for a $10 survey that I was doing on an online panel. And I thought, why would a doctor bother take a $10 survey? Again, not necessarily a massive problem, and he may have been a legit person. But if I have a chance to choose between a person that raises a flag versus not, I will probably go with the one that does not raise a flag. What language are they representing themselves in on their profile or in their social presence? If I'm recruiting somebody who is a native English speaker and their profile is written all over, in foreign language, that again raises flags for me as to whether or not I want that person in my study. What is their location, and is that the location for which you are recruiting participants? If they don't match, there could be legitimate stories why the locations don't match. Again, things to watch out for. Social media credentials are worth looking at if they are available for you to access. So for example, on Respondent, one of the platforms that I've used recently, there is on a participant profile a link that says, LinkedIn for this participant has been verified, thumbs up, this is a legitimate person. And yet when I click on the LinkedIn link, it takes me to a 404 page, which basically says this page does not exist. And this supposedly verified social media account really is fake. So if you have an option to verify whether somebody is truly who they say they are, go for it. And the final thing to watch out for is getting identical answers on a series of screeners that may have been submitted within a very short time window. I have seen quite a few folks that have verbatim identical answers to my prove you're not a robot test question. And if you have verbatim identical answers to a point of typos, all of those participants to me are not folks that I want to include in my study because I don't want their data, because their data is going to be fake. Alrighty, so you have recruited people, you have vetted them for quality, and you are scheduling folks that fit your criteria to participate in the study. So I don't want to talk about all the logistics of scheduling folks, but really here, what we want to share with you are a couple of points, how you have spent a lot of time and effort and cost to recruit people, to vet them and screen them. And we don't want to have people drop out of your study purely because there are scheduling challenges or logistic challenges that prevent them from actually coming up to your study and completing the study. So what are some of the things that you can do to make sure that the investment of resources that you've already made continues to pay off? So a couple things to consider. First is the time of when your study is actually happening. So some of us have a 9-to-5 job, and this is when we do a lot of our work. But the people that you may want to recruit and engage in your research study may also be working a 9-to-5 job. So if your sessions never happen outside of your normal business hours, you may have a very hard time recruiting folks that would be able to meet during your business hours. Or you may attract really not the appropriate or right kind of participants to be in your study. So consider offering research sessions in the evenings or on weekends or on some holidays to be considered and mindful of the working and lifestyle choices of the audience that you're targeting. Another thing that we have learned is the need to over-communicate. So our participants get a lot of emails, messages from a variety of channels, and your 1 or 2 email reminder about when and where to come to a study may not be sufficient. You may need to call them, you may need to text them, you may need to leave a voice message. We suggest that you over-communicate when, where, how to show up rather than under-communicate to increase the chances that folks do show up for the study. We also recommend that you build buffers into your schedule. So in case somebody is running late because they can't find a parking spot, or they have a trouble entering the building, or they had to put dinner on the table and they were 3 minutes late to dial into your Zoom call, you don't want their session to run over into another person's session, and you also don't want to cut their session short and not complete your entire data collection process. So consider that, again, as a way to optimize that all the recruitment effort you've spent pays off. Make sure that you are accessible and available from session to session for people to find you. So for example, if somebody needs to sign into Zoom, or somebody needs to arrive at a building and meet you, close to their show up time, make sure that they know how to find you in case they're having trouble joining. Their internet dropped. Can they text you and tell you that they will be 5 minutes late? They can't find parking. Can they call you and tell you that they will be there in 10 minutes? And don't just provide them with your contact information. Make sure that you are also monitoring the channels through which you said you would be available, again, to increase the chances that folks actually show up for the study. And then finally, have a backup plan for tech failures. So if somebody comes up to your study and your prototype fails to work, or internet goes down and you can't access some of the content and materials that you needed to show the participant, or whatever have you, make sure that you have a backup plan of how you're going to engage with that participant for the remainder of the session, so that you don't end up paying them for the session and not collecting any data. So this is a benefit to you to make sure that all of the costs that you have spent actually still delivers some value. Alrighty, so folks got recruited, they were the right people, they showed up for your study because you over-communicated and they knew what to do, and now they have completed the study, so it's time to pay out. The study is done, and really this is why they were here to begin with. They won the money at the end of the research study. So a few things to talk about here. You should consider picking an incentive that will be appealing to your audience as a way to, again, attract them to your study and have them complete the study. So as an example, if I'm recruiting teenage gamers, I am quite confident that an Ulta gift card is not going to be very appealing to them. And if I'm recruiting older adults, a GameStop gift card will also not be appealing to them. Or it will be appealing to a very, very niche segment of either of those groups. So pick an incentive that is appealing to your audience. Make sure that you're communicating your incentive amount, type, and even timeline of when they will receive the incentive upfront and repeatedly. You're going to get a $50 Ulta gift card, and it will be sent to you by end of this week. And it will be a gift card. It won't be cash. Or it will be a selection between these 5 cards. It's up to you how it's up to you to select the card. You'll get the link to make your choice right after the study that we have scheduled is done. Participants want to know those things, makes them feel more confident because, again, they are here for the money. If there are any incentive fees that the participant will have to pay out of pocket, make sure that you know that and make sure that they know that up front. I was very unpleasantly surprised when a study that we ran through Respondent, we were paying a participant $100 per session, and I got an email from one of the participants and they said, hey, I just got a $95 payment. Why is it not $100 as you were advertising? And lo and behold, and this is poor work on our part because we did not investigate this any further, partly because it was never an issue previously, but respondents started charging not just me, a researcher, for recruiting the participant, but also the participant for issuing them the money. So after that very unpleasant interaction, we learned and started telling participants that the study is will pay you $100, and FYI, respondent is going to take $5 as their cut from your incentive. So make sure that you know these types of things and communicate them. And of course, if somebody else is handling your incentives, that's a very great place to be in, because then you just have to pay the bill and not deal with anything else. But if you have to do it yourself, a few additional things to consider. You could be using a third-party tool to help issue and track the incentives that you're paying. So Tango Cards and Tremendas are two vendors that come to mind. They take a very low cost for the transactions that they support, and that's what they do. They just issue incentives. Find out whose support you need internally to be able to issue incentives. So whether that's finance, accounting, your project manager, figure out what the internal logistics are for setting aside funds and issuing those funds externally. Make sure you're tracking all payments and receipts. Lexie and I have both had experiences where participants say, I never got the card. Can you issue it to me again? And yet we can go back to our logs and say, well, it shows here that you opened the email on this date and you actually cashed in your card. So no, I will not send you more money. Or, okay, you have never received this, you have never opened it. Let me cancel this card and let me issue a new one. So make sure you're tracking all that. And also be aware about incentive scams. We have had many cases where folks email us and say, oh, can you please send this payment to my PayPal account because I cannot log into the original one, and they tell you another sob story. And you need to be nice and firm and say, the only way we're issuing incentives, as you knew at the beginning of the study and as it's documented in our paperwork, is this way, and I cannot issue you a separate incentive. Because what these folks are trying to do is get some extra money from you. And if you get such requests, I would also consider revisiting and evaluating whether the data you got from this participant is actually data that you want to include in your final analysis. Just a flag. So we're running up on time, and this is the one to last slide that I will show you. So a few other things for you just to keep in the back of your head as you're recruiting and doing studies are the following. Do you need to have an NDA? And if you do, at what point in your recruitment process should you get the NDA signed? You don't want to disclose who you're doing research for, but at some point, if you need an NDA, you may need to communicate that to participants before they sign up for a study. You may need to get involved with your legal team, not just for the consent and for NDA forms that you may need to have participants sign in your study, but you may have to include legalese and jargon on a lot of your recruitment documentation. If you're doing sweepstakes, you may have to have certain legal language from your organization that says, you know, here are the rules for sweepstakes, etc., so that the company doesn't get in trouble for issuing incentives in general. Make sure that you have ideas about how you're going to record sessions and where you're going to store data, how you're going to protect private and sensitive information. And you need to communicate that as part of your recruitment to the participants so that they feel comfortable signing up for your study, that they're not surprised in the middle of a study when you start asking them for information that they're not comfortable sharing. You need to make sure that your session recordings and data storage policies are also coordinated with the legal team, if you have one, and that you're not violating any laws, and especially the increasing policies around private information that's governed by a lot of state laws that vary across the country. So several other things to consider and deep dive into, but we don't have time for that. And I am sure that we didn't answer everything that you may have wanted to ask or learn about, but please connect with Lexie and I on LinkedIn. We would love to continue the conversation, learn from your questions, and not just share our experiences. And again, if you would like to review the deck here with some additional content, this is where you can find it. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, thank you, Lexie and Evelina.
Thank you, Alan, for being a great host.
Oh, I was able to phone it in. You handled everything. And you stuck the landing on the time, so that's great.
That is good. 1 minute to spare.
Yes.
I hope the rest of you enjoy the conference.